Oh man, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula. Francis Ford Coppola's sumptuous rendition is a faithful, albeit imperfect stab at the world's most famous bloodsucker in his purest literary form, and just about the biggest on-screen mood you'll ever encounter. It also spawned the best Simpsons treehouse of horror in Bart Simpson's Dracula, so it has that going for it too. The film is also a treasure trove of trivia and a production that used some of the most fascinating movie-making techniques and many of the period's finest characters. So get that blood pumping. I'm Ewan, this is What Culture Horror, and here are 25 things you didn't know about Bram Stoker's Dracula. Hopefully. Number 25. Coppola found the project because Winona Ryder left The Godfather Part 3. In 1991, Winona Ryder was a busy woman. Starring in 5 major Hollywood productions in 2 years had taken its toll, and by the time she had completed Mermaids in 1990, she already had a 6th film gearing up to shoot, Coppola's The Godfather Part 3. Ryder eventually bowed out of the project due to nervous exhaustion, but would later bring the novel Dracula to Coppola's attention, including an early draft of the script written by James V. Hart. Fearing she was out of favor with Coppola, Ryder managed to spark his interest in the project, leading to the two finally getting the chance to collaborate. Number 24. Wait, did Reeves and Ryder get married for real? After Jonathan Harker escapes Castle Dracula, he and Mina are hastily married, fearing for their souls. Filmed in a Los Angeles Greek Orthodox church, complete with a Romanian Orthodox minister, it now appears that the ceremony may have been a little too convincing. In fact, it might have been a real wedding. We actually got married in Dracula. No, I swear to God, I think we're married in real life, said Ryder in an interview with EW whilst promoting Destination Wedding, an appropriately titled movie that reunited her with fellow star Keanu Reeves. Number 23. Defying the laws of physics. Many strange phenomenon litter Bram Stoker's Dracula, as one would expect in a film about the undead. Coppola pitched the idea in pre-production that objects and locations that came into contact with the titular vampire should not behave in the normal way. Rats appear to cling to ceilings, liquid seeps upward from mysterious vials, and Dracula's shadow appears to have a mind of its own, moving independently from Oldman. So it's not just vampires who display supernatural abilities. Everything they come into contact with is affected by their dark presence. Number 22. And I never drink wine. While Dracula's drinking habits are a matter of public record, the same cannot be said of Gary Oldman, who, according to on-set reports from Ryder and the crew, liked a tipple while getting into character. Said The Telegraph, during the filming of Bram Stoker's Dracula, Oldman was picked up by police for driving while drunk and later received a 6-month ban. As Dracula licks the blood from Harker's straight razor, Oldman was apparently a little worse for wear. Filmed at midnight to get the cast in the mood, Oldman's count never looked more otherworldly. Number 21. That wasn't Gary Oldman screaming either. At the climax of the prologue, Oldman's grief-stricken Prince Vlad vows to rise from the grave to avenge the death of his love Elisabetta, letting out a blood-curdling scream as blood pours from the skewered crucifix. Coppola actually drafted in Lux Interior, lead singer of the Cramps, punk rockers from Sacramento, California, to record Dracula's roar, as Oldman's lungs apparently weren't up to the job. Number 20. There were barely any post-production effects. Despite Coppola's insistence that all effects remain quote-unquote in camera, one particular sequence, a memorable moment from the novel, required the use of an optical effect. As Harker approaches Castle Dracula, the coach passes a ring of blue flames rising into the night sky, repeating one after the next. These shots stand, amazingly, as the only post-production effects work in the entire film. Number 19. Dracula saved Zoetrope. By the early 1990s, Coppola's production company was facing financial collapse. Despite his reputation as one of America's most influential auteurs, Coppola's debts had risen to the tune of $27 million, and financiers were no longer in a position to back his future projects. Despite that, Columbia Pictures fronted the cash after Coppola agreed to shoot entirely on sound stages to avoid any complications that location-based productions might face. Dracula would earn $215 million against a budget of just $30 million, ironically making it the first time a vampire has injected life into something. Number 18. Liam Neeson was almost Van Helsing? When the role of vampire hunter Van Helsing was announced, Liam Neeson actually auditioned for the part. With his gentle yet imposing stature, Neeson might have brought an entirely different angle to the character, but unfortunately for him, Anthony Hopkins was set to steal the show. Surfing the wave of accolades from The Silence of the Lambs in 1991, Hopkins was in a position to pick up almost any role he desired and sought the part of Van Helsing for himself. It would prove to be an inspired piece of casting, as Hopkins captured the eccentric expert of the occult perfectly. Number 17. The creator of Hellboy was involved behind the scenes. Mike Mignola is one of the coolest dudes in all of comic bookdom, being most famous for creating Hellboy for Dark Horse Comics in the early 90s. He's also had stints at Marvel and DC, but few may be aware of his work in the movie biz. Mignola was involved in the productions of both Atlantis: The Lost Empire and Blade 2, but served as an illustrator on Dracula and also drew the film's comic book adaptation. The writer/artist has always been influenced by the Gothic, and so it's no surprise that Coppola's film bears many of the hallmarks that would later make Hellboy such a hit, both on and off the page. Number 16. Location, location, location. One would expect a lavish production of Dracula to utilize some of the novel's more exotic locations, such as the real Transylvania, Wallachia, or Romania. Budget restraints, however, would force Coppola to shoot the film entirely on a soundstage with specially crafted sets doubling for Castle Dracula, Victorian London, and Whitby. With some atmospheric lighting, stunning practical effects, and good old-fashioned acting, the results were seamless, and just as convincing as any potentially risky location shoot. Number 15. Sumptuous costume design. In a production like Dracula, the suspension of disbelief is everything. To realize the Victorian setting and lavish Gothic atmosphere, Japanese costume designer Eiko Ishioka, who worked on the equally lavish The Cell, would create some of the most memorable suits, dresses, and robes seen on film. Ishioka, who received a Grammy for her Miles Davis album cover, snagged the Oscar for costume design, with her stunning reproduction Victorian dresses, frock coats, and all manner of weird and wonderful hats, boots, and Gothic apparel required to realize the style and tone of the novel. Number 14. Sadie Frost made a child cry. While filming one of the most iconic sequences from the novel, Lucy Westenra, now a willing disciple of Dracula, returns to her crypt, cradling a child in her arms. It's a creepy scene and gives us a good look at the vampire in all her moonlit beauty, moments before Van Helsing implores Arthur Hollywood to drive a stake through her heart. Side note, I think this might be my favorite scene in the entire movie. It's just all kinds of brilliant. If all that sounds a bit much, think how the poor kid felt. Sadie Frost's makeup and performance were enough to induce a river of tears from the little girl, who had to be soothed by both Coppola and Frost. Let's hope she took her fangs out first. Number 13. Old school camera magic. Coppola insisted he would only use in-camera effects to capture the feel of early cinema. After his original effects team were unable to deliver, he fired the entire department and tasked his son Roman to complete the project instead. Matte paintings, forced perspective, and rear screen projection were used with stunning results in the final cut. The shot of Reeves aboard a train reading a journal with Dracula's eyes and a speeding train superimposed used a combination of these techniques. Oldman's eyes were projected onto a matte painting of the mountains behind the window of the train, while a miniature train was shot moving across an oversized diary, combining all three elements for the finished shot. Number 12. The Land Beyond the Forest. As Mina Murray recalls her past incarnation as Elisabetta, bride to Prince Vlad, she describes the land beyond the forest as if from memory. A land beyond a great, vast forest, surrounded by majestic mountains, lush vineyards, and flowers of such frailty and beauty as to be found nowhere else. Land Beyond the Forest is in fact the literal translation of Transylvania, and is the perfect description of a seemingly beautiful and mysterious part of the world. Number 11. I know where the bastard sleeps. Or, I know where the bastard sleeps. While I am more than willing to defend Keanu Reeves in Bram Stoker's Dracula to the death, I totally get that it's a bit hammy. Reeves blamed exhaustion for his supposedly poor performance. I just didn't have anything left to give, he said a while ago. It's okay, Keanu. We love you. Number 10. The Real Dracula. Stoker took inspiration for Dracula from Vlad the Impaler, yet Coppola took the inspiration one step further. In the sweeping prologue, Dracula is depicted as the Prince of Transylvania, replete with his armies repelling the Ottoman invasion of the 15th century. Hopkins' Van Helsing recounts the tale to Harker. Here occurs the shocking and frightening history of the wild berserker, Prince Dracula, how he impaled people and roasted them, boiled their heads in a kettle, how he skinned them alive and hacked them to pieces and then drank their blood. While obvious artistic license is used, the events are not that far from the historical truth, just without the facts. Number 9. Art imitating art. Many films use art for inspiration, but Dracula relied on the works of Albrecht Dürer, a German painter from the 15th century, and Gustav Klimt, a 19th century Austrian artist prominent in the secession movement. Examples of this can be found in Castle Dracula and the portrait of the vampire himself, remodeled from Dürer's face to resemble that of Oldman's. The magnificent gown worn by Dracula in the film's climax was inspired by Klimt's painting The Kiss, as pictured here. Number 8. Oldman lowered his voice range by a whole octave. That's really hard. While in preparation for his role as Dracula, Gary Oldman employed a voice coach on and off set to help him with some of the more challenging aspects of the character's vocalization. After several months training with the singing coach, Oldman was able to lower his vocal range by an entire octave, thus providing Dracula with the more sinister tones and vocal fries that hold so much to the performance's appeal. Number 7. Finding the right Dracula. Casting such an important role is challenging, especially for a role as well known as Dracula. There have been so many versions of the character since his movie debut in Nosferatu in 1922, that it's hard to find a fresh look sympathetic to the novel, yet new to the audience. With Bela Lugosi's thick Hungarian accent imprinted on the collective popular imagination, it's no wonder that so many were considered for the auspicious part in the hunt for fresh blood. Antonio Banderas, Gabriel Byrne, Hugh Grant, Rupert Everett, Sting, Alan Rickman, Nicolas Cage, Ray Liotta, Colin Firth, Daniel Day-Lewis, and, most bizarrely, Alec Baldwin were all considered. Number 6. George Lucas advised Coppola. George Lucas is the last person one would expect to be giving advice on the set of a horror film, yet he pitched an idea to Coppola regarding a key scene at a screening before the movie's release. At the film's climax, Dracula's heart is impaled by Mina after their escape to the castle. Lucas suggested she decapitate Dracula altogether, thus killing him once and for all and reuniting them in heaven. Oh George, you and your dismemberment. Number 5. Juliette Lewis was almost Lucy? Casting rumours make for a great what could have been conversation, so when it was revealed that Juliette Lewis may have once landed the role of Lucy Westenra in Francis Ford Coppola's lavish Dracula adaptation instead of Sadie Frost, it makes for interesting reading. Lewis was at one point an actor to be reckoned with, starring in director Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear and the vampire-themed Dusk Till Dawn from Tarantino and Rodriguez years later. Number 4. Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't the first literary adaptation by Francis Ford Coppola. Mario Puzo's The Godfather, along with John Grisham's The Rainmaker, show the director's penchant for crediting the work to the author. While some may see this as purely an exercise in savvy marketing or giving credit where credit's due, the addition of the author's name may relate to a rights issue surrounding previous adaptations of the book. The simple addition of Stoker's name may have prevented any legal action from Universal and their efficiently titled Dracula, which released in 1931. Number 3. Love Song for a Vampire. Bringing in world-famous musicians can lend movies additional box office weight and can be an interesting addition to the overall tone of the project. Annie Lennox, of Eurythmics fame, was brought in to record the haunting Love Song for a Vampire, the romantic theme, over the end credits of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The track would go on to be a hit, reaching number 3 in the UK charts in 1992. Number 2. Johnny Depp was almost Jonathan Harker. Sliding Doors attempted to show us what life could have been like with the simple action of making a different choice, and how differently this vampire flick could have been if, as rumoured, Johnny Depp had been cast as the heroic lead, Jonathan Harker, instead of our dear old Keanu. And number 1, a haunting melody. In the final entry, praise goes to the magnificent orchestral score for Bram Stoker's Dracula, written by Polish maestro Wojciech Kiar, without whose contribution the film would have been significantly less menacing. Kiar was awarded for the ASCAP Award from the American Society of Composers, Authors and Producers in Los Angeles, along with the nomination for the Saturn Award for Best Music in a Science Fiction, Fantasy or Horror Film in 1993. The music is a beautiful, haunting, and ominous addition to the legacy of Dracula, adding layers of emotional depth to a one-dimensional monster. Kiar sadly passed away in 2013, but his contribution to cinema will forever be immortalized, like the character his work so beautifully personified. And that was 25 things you hopefully didn't know about Bram Stoker's Dracula. Do you know any other interesting facts about the film? Let us know down in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to What Culture Horror so you don't miss any more uploads throughout spooky season and beyond. That's all for now though, I've been Ewan, and I'll see you next time. Bye!